Coming up on This Week in Radio Tech, a topic we don't often talk about, that's tower safety, climbing safety, safety procedures, what engineers like you and me need to do around a tower site to help the tower crew stay safe and make sure we're hiring the right tower crew that's got the right training and pays attention to the important stuff like staying alive. It's coming up next on TWiRT. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Broadcasters General Store with outstanding service, savings, and support online at bgs.cc. By Broadcast Bionics with the Bionics Studio, including talk show control, social media, and visual radio. Broadcast Bionics brings exceptional audience engagement to radio and TV. By AIR, featuring Playout One radio automation software, comprehensive streaming solutions, website content management, and social media tools for maximum listener engagement on the web at AIIR.com. By Angry Audio. Audio problems disappear when you get angry at angryaudio.com. And by Max Connect Wireless, prioritized high-speed internet service designed for transmitter sites and remote broadcasts. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech, the show where we talk about everything from the microphone to the light bulb at the top of the tower. And for this episode, we're going to be a lot closer to the top of the tower, to the light bulb at the top of the tower. Hey, I'm Kirk Harnack, your host. So delighted to be here. It's our 740th episode. I've been doing this for, coming up on 16 years now, I believe. I am not in the usual studio, am I? No, usually I'm in the Telos Alliance studio in Nashville, Tennessee, which doubles as my office. But today I am I'm in a really nice place, although it's getting ready to rain. I'm in Isle of Palms, South Carolina, which is really close to Charleston, South Carolina. I'm out here visiting a friend and doing some computer work for him and some remote work for Telos Alliance. So glad that I was able to travel and get out here and enjoy we're about four blocks from the beach. So maybe we'll get to see the ocean at some point. But not today. It's cloudy and some big rain is supposedly coming through. I'm under a porch, but I'm told that sometimes the wind can blow pretty hard. Chris Tarr is not on today. He should be back next week. So we'll welcome Chris back next week. All right. Our show. I mentioned last week that our show was about towers and tower safety standards and about the organization that promotes these tower safety standards and puts them together and writes them as well. And that's about all I know. So we're going to have an hour worth of finding out about tower safety standards and as engineers, our relationships with tower companies and, our interest in making sure that they are doing the right things and doing it safely. So we have two guests here, and we're going to bring in, first of all, Kathy. Kathy, how do you say your last name? Is it Stieler? Stieler? What?
Stieler.
Okay.
Pittsburgh
Kathy
Steelers.
Okay, there you go. Spelled different, but yeah, said like the team. And
Yes.
Suncast. Do we have video of Kathy? There she is. Hey, Kathy. There she is. And Kathy, what do you do with this group? Oh, I should ask Nate. What does this stand for? National something. What is it?
Well, it used to be a National Association of Tower Erectors. We actually just celebrated our 30th anniversary, which is pretty exciting. We were in Raleigh, North Carolina for the celebration. So we began with about 65 people that got together and said 30 years ago and said, we got some issues with safety and let's all band together and see what we can do to help the industry. We've grown to about 1,100 members now, so we're quite large. And our entire mission statement is about safety. How do we help the climbers work safely? How do we help contractors work safely? So that's our whole goal. I was hired about it's almost 4 years ago now, to be their first director of safety, health, and compliance. I wrote safety standards. I actually did work in the broadcast industry for 12 years. Worked with a local broadcaster doing TV and radio installations. So, which is kind of fun. And then I took this position. I've been in safety for 45 years. I'm old.
Well, I've been doing this for about 45 years too. So I'm right in there with you, Kathy.
Yeah.
I tell you what, if you would, Kathy, you know more about him than I do. Would you please introduce our other guest, Clark?
Oh, I'd love to. I met Clark a couple years ago. Clark works for American Towers, which is a tower owner. His name is Clark Lindstrom, and he's an amazing gentleman to work with, knows the industry backwards and forwards, and I've been very blessed to work with him in so many different safety standards. Clark, I apologize. I don't know what your title is. I just know you as Clark.
Yeah, no worries.
There's Clark.
Hi, Clark Lindstrom. I'm the Director of Safety Programs at American Tower. Been in telecom since about 2000, been with American Tower since 2006, mainly dealing with the operations side of the business. Back in August of 2023, I decided to parlay my skills in construction and operations to try to further our stance as the industry leader in telecom for the U.S. and globally, which led to my involvement with Nate, several of their safety committees, and how I became friends with Kathy. And happy to be here tonight with you guys.
So I guess American Tower is, you're very involved with this safety organization, Nate. I don't know if it's a premier member or something, but you guys certainly play a strong role in the organization yourselves, right?
Yes, sir. My team is involved in at least 5 different safety committees with Nate. So it's a team of 3, but we do help guide standards. We attend all the meetings, and we also try to communicate out the standards that are agreed upon and enforce the safety policies that are recommended by Nate throughout the industry, throughout the contractors that work on our tower sites as well. We do like to consider ourselves leaders, both in the verb format and the noun format. So to get out in front of it and to help guide for a safer industry is something that we strive for.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, coming up on the show, we're going to take a break in a minute, but we're going to be talking about a number of different topics that broadcast engineers and tower crews are concerned with. And we, as engineers, I'd like to know that our tower crew is aware of these topics, things like hazards on the ground. We know they're working up there, but what on the ground might cause them a problem? RF energy risks, falling objects, signage, NFPA compliant signage, emergency preparedness, and building a culture of safety. And all those things are really important, and we're going to be addressing those as well as some other questions that I have. So it's This Week in Radio Tech. Our show is brought to you by my friends at air.com. It's spelled funny because the internet, AIIR.com. And they have a very amazing offer for web streaming for your radio station. And here's more about it. Hey, it's Kirk Harnack, and I'm here with Ricky Lee, the CEO of AIR. Ricky, you guys make a fantastic automation system, but streaming is a really big deal. Tell me about streaming with AIR.
It really is. We've got a beautiful streaming platform with an incredible dashboard with fantastic analytics. And you can buy it for just $20 a month, all you can eat. No limits on bandwidth or bit rates. And you can also record shows as well. So if you like to deliver on-demand content for $20 a month, you can stream and deliver that on-demand content to an RSS feed that can feed your radio player, your mobile apps, or a podcast that people can download and enjoy.
Now, $20 a month, that must be for just some slow MP3, right?
No, MP3, AAC, and we also now support HLS, which is big in the industry right now.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. How do I start to explore or find out more about streaming through AIR?
You go to air.com, AIIR.com/streaming. And from there, with a credit card, you can sign up and get started.
We appreciate AIR sponsoring this show, and check out also their Playout One automation software. That's what all 21 of my radio stations use, is Playout One. Appreciate AIR. Thanks very much. It's Kirk Harnack. I am coming to you today from Charleston, South Carolina, and we're talking about towers, which is something that we haven't talked about a whole lot on our podcast. We've never talked specifically about tower safety. And Kathy Stieler and Clark Lindstrom are both with us today. Kathy, you started out by telling us about the how Nate got started. And did I misunderstand you? You said it started out standing for the National Association of Tower Erectors. Is that still what it stands for, or did you do some shuffling?
They've rebranded mostly because, our industry has changed a lot. So we have rebranded to NATE, the Communications Infrastructure Contractors Association. It's a mouthful, but it's still, our same principles are still here. Our same mission statement is still here. We are still run by principal contractors. We have a lot of members that are not principal contractors, such as American Tower, other tower owners, suppliers, safety organizations. but it is still run by a board of directors, and it's still run by the principal contractors. So our
Now,
mission is still the same.
mhm. You mentioned that the organization started about 30 years ago. Would I be wrong, or would I be misremembering that it seems like 60 Minutes or somebody did a piece, a news piece, maybe 30 years ago about a number of deaths in the tower industry with the fast construction of a lot of cellular towers. Was Nate born out of any of that possibly bad time in the industry?
I don't think so. I believe the thing that you are referencing came out back in 2012. Maybe I did a program on it on IEEE, and there was a lot in it that I could probably have debunked or did debunk. But no,
Yeah.
that's not how it started. But that was public broadcast, I believe, came out with it maybe 2012,
Gotcha. Okay.
2013. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll move on. So, help me with the foundation of the organization is primarily for safety.
Yes.
Kind of tell me about where did you start in developing best practices or rules or whatever you may call them to help keep tower crews safe in their practices? What are some of the big areas or tenets or topics of safety that you guys go into?
So the very first thing that we go into is fall protection. That's all of our work is done vertically. I came from the industry or from a construction industry that work was done horizontally. So this was quite a shock to me that everything can be done, up in the air. So Nate started out with the fatalities came from falls. And so that was the very first thing that they did. Let's talk about how to not have that. Continuous fall protection is huge. The second issue with, working at height is doing rigging. And we all know that, that's the second biggest thing with drop loads or whatever kind of work. And so Nate has helped write standards on rigging training and rigging safety. Those are probably the two big ones. There's a lot of others. There is a brand new, it came out in 2016, ANSI standard called A1048. And Nate was absolutely paramount in getting that written. It was given to one of the members of Nate and said, can you write this? And so many of the Nate members as subject matter experts were involved with it. So it came out in 2016. It has recently been revised in 2023. And it's really the Bible of the safety for doing work on towers, on construction, on telecommunication structures. And you are now talking to the new chair of A1048. So any questions on it, that's something that I will be able to help people with.
Now help correct me. That's a set of standards. Is that a published document that people can access? Okay.
Absolutely. It is published. It's from the ANSI standards, and it's A1048, and absolutely anybody can purchase it. You can go to the Nate website and purchase it, or you can purchase it from directly from ASSP. But it is an amazing document, and it gives your owners just about a Bible about what you should expect from a contractor, from fall protection, from everything.
I want to return to you in a minute, Kathy, with some follow-up questions, and even just about the first two topics, fall protection and rigging. I want to ask Clark. Clark, you work with a tower company, and tell me what your primary role there is. Are you involved quite a bit with safety since you guys own a lot of vertical real estate?
Absolutely. So my role is primarily to ensure the safety of our employees, our contractors, and the general public anytime that they are on or around any of our tower sites. Again, primary focus is employee safety, and again, because we are a real estate owner and not an actual construction crew, we are relatively low on the risk spectrum. So that allows me to focus a lot of my time on the contractors that actually perform work on our sites. Verifying that they're compliant with their certifications and that they're performing the work safely on our sites.
Gotcha. Okay. So are there, when you have a crew come in, I mean, I guess every now and then you end up working with a crew that you had not worked with before. Of course, as time goes on, you get to know the same crews over and over again. You get a trust relationship there. When you experience a new crew, what are some of the things that you look for that they're doing or not doing to do their job safely and get the job done still?
So that's a twofold question. We do have a very robust onboarding process for our contractors. We validate them before they're ever allowed to access our sites. So we have a very deep vendor pool on our contractor database that says who is allowed and who is not allowed to work on our sites. And through the qualification process, we review their certifications, whether it's climbing, RF training, their OSHA certs, right, first aid CPR. We also look at their insurance. We check out their OSHA logs, their TMR, their
EMR.
EMR, and then TRIR, right, just to make sure that they're safely operating before we'll consider onboarding them. If anything during that onboarding process pops up as a flag, it goes for a second level of scrutiny. We have a deeper conversation with that company to find out if there were some extenuating circumstances. Perhaps there had been an injury 2 or 3 years ago, and then there was a market shift and they downsized, right? So they didn't catch the benefit of that number going down. We will take that on a case by case, but essentially everybody that does come out to one of our tower sites must be pre-approved and pre-qualified. If we find somebody that is on our site that is unapproved, they are escorted off, led through the approval process, and then we will consider doing business with them in the future.
That is really interesting, and I actually experienced. I'll back up. I'm part owner of 21 radio stations, and 20, 30 years ago, we typically owned the towers that we were on, and they tended to be small towers. We're in small towns for our broadcast stations, but now we've gone into some larger towns, and we tend to rent vertical tower space to put our antennas on. And yet we may have a friend who's in the tower business or a small company. And I recall for example, in Oxford, Mississippi, we had to get this tower crew had to get vetted, onboarded, as you put it. That's a really interesting way to say it. And it's true with whoever owned that particular tower. I'm sorry, I don't remember if it's an American Tower site or somebody else's. But I think this kind of small town tower company took a little umbrage to having to go through that process. But hey, it's not your tower, dude, and it's not our tower either. It's somebody else's tower, and they're concerned with safety. Do you, of course, with big tower companies, I'm sure that they're very used to this. They already have good relationships and all that kind of thing. Do you find some difficulty in getting smaller companies on board with you that way to realize that, hey, you need to be qualified to climb our tower?
No, we don't. It's the same across whether it's broadcast industry or it's out of the wireless industry. Both, American Tower, our main competitors in the vertical real estate market, as well as all of our wireless carriers, have almost identical qualifications that we require our contractors to have. So if you've been in the tower industry for more than 5 minutes, you're going to know what the process is, and you're going to follow the steps. You're going to want to ensure that you're there. And I do think that a lot of that is what Nate has built on for the last 30 years that has led to the shift of the two guys and a rope in the back of a truck to people taking it more seriously and participating at a level that shows they're committed to safety and bringing their workers home safe every night.
What excellent points. And I do remember, 30 years ago, I think every tower crew I probably hired was actually two guys and a rope in the back of a truck. Thank you for putting that all in perspective. Yeah. And it does seem to me that the fact that so many towers are owned by companies like American Tower, that you end up getting probably a lot less shoddy work than may have been done in the past. And I'm just speaking at least in my experience, in small and medium markets where the broadcasters are small, and sometimes there's handshake relationships with a tower crew. It does seem to be done on a much more professional basis nowadays. But by the way, in my travels, one day I was filling up with gas at a truck stop and met somebody who had an American Tower a sticker or a sign on his truck, and got into a great conversation. And he oversees a few sites, I think in Arkansas and maybe West Tennessee. And what a pleasure to talk to this guy. You can tell he was very professional in his outlook on vertical real estate, and I think that's so cool. So my hats off to you guys at American Tower for keeping the professional standards high. And I guess really from a business perspective, it's necessary to have this outlook, isn't it? It's good for business.
It absolutely is. Any preventable accident, right, is a life saved. Right, and I think ultimately where I come at it is if I can keep one person safe at the end of the day, I think I successfully did my job. And just looking at the shift from when I started in 2000, my training process was I was given about a 3-inch binder. This not with American Tower, just to preface that. I was given a 3-inch binder with what the safety policy was. I was given about 2 minutes to look at it and handed a belt and say, go up the tower. And now through some of the standards that organizations like NATE, NWSA, right, TWiRT have put in place, it's a very lengthy onboarding and training process just to even be qualified to climb the tower, to access one of the sites. And I think that just from a risk mitigation standpoint, not only us, but our other industry peers are looking at the same thing, right? It's to minimize the risk and make sure everybody gets home at the end of the night. If you're having incidents, injuries, God forbid, fatalities on a weekly basis or monthly basis, you're going to get no business done. Nobody's going to want to do it. So the more that you can do to advocate safety, the more you're going to keep your network up, right? And the more that you are going to be successful in your business venture as well.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Hey, we're talking with Clark Lindstrom and also with Kathy Stieler on This Week in Radio Tech. Clark is with American Tower and is in charge of a lot of safety aspects there. And Kathy is with NATE. I'll call it the National Association of Tower Erectors, but I know it's got a longer name now. I'm Kirk Harnack. I'm in Charleston, South Carolina. Oh, it was such a sunny day earlier. Now, oh my goodness, it's turned cold. Here I am in a short sleeve shirt. That wasn't too smart. We're going to take this quick commercial break. When we come back, Kathy and Clark, I'd like to really get into our conversation about the practical implications of safety rules as they affect tower climbers, and then also as they affect your customers, your broadcast engineering customers, and what may be expected of a customer to help keep the site and the crew to do their part to keep them safe. So we'll talk about more practical implications coming up. It's This Week in Radio Tech. Our show's brought to you in part by Broadcast Bionics, and we'll be right back.
Welcome to the Bionic Studio. The Bionic Studio brings all audience interaction to the fingertips of a production team in radio, TV, and podcast. Our workflow-led system is working 24/7 around the world for small broadcasters and national and international networks. Our telephony module, Bionic Talk Show, allows cost-effective centralization, remote operation, scalability, and resilience across an entire network of stations, but at the same time is used in single-studio self-op environments. Social media curation and activity is now considered a broadcast-critical part of programming. Bionic Social means the studio isn't overwhelmed with a wall of interaction from an ever-growing number of social platforms. We combine SMS, MMS, and email together with a speech-to-text service for listeners using smart speakers. We enable studio teams to curate, filter, and display all platforms in one place, and post text, images, and video content to multiple platforms in one operation. Effortless collection of video content with Bionic Director has helped position some of the world's most successful stations as leaders in viral content, generating appointments to listen and free marketing via retweets and shares. Bionic Contest enables end-to-end tracking of on-air competitions, live reads, and prizes. These can be on-air contests, automated SMS entry, or online. Anywhere, and Skype TX for Radio brings high-quality audio and video contribution into the studio with ease. No need for dedicated PCs to run different applications. Everything is controlled within the Bionic Studio UI, and incoming connections are visible to users along with all other platforms. Our codec integration enables connection, algorithm configuration, and directory to a wide range of IP and ISDN codecs. The Bionic Studio, a unique suite of products designed to enable your talent to work smarter.
The Bionics Studio from Broadcast Bionics. Thank you so much, Broadcast Bionics, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. And if you're a good engineer, and I know you are, you can be a hero by recommending some of these products into your broadcast facilities. They make a lot of cool stuff, and we use some of it too. Hey, it's This Week in Radio Tech. Kirk Harnack here in Charleston, South Carolina. You know, you'd think as a former TV meteorologist, I could do a better job at checking the weather before I start the show. I could be inside right now. But no, I'm out here where it has turned cold and windy and rainy. I saw it coming on the radar, but I actually thought it would be through here sooner, but it's not. Hey, we're talking about towers, tower safety, and we have Clark Lindstrom here, and also Kathy Stieler is with us. I want to talk about practical implications of rules and safety procedures and so forth. Kathy, earlier you talked about continuous. What was the word you used? When tower
Continuous
climbers
fall
are
protection.
continuous fall protection. All right. Is that where
Yeah, we're trying to get away from
I got two hooks.
of 100% tie off.
Yeah.
Yeah. So because it's kind of 100% tie off used to be the old terminology, but if you think about it, tie off doesn't really mean you're tying onto the tower. So we're changing our whole verbiage to continuous fall protection because that's really what it's all about.
What's the difference between I see those steel cables going up next to the ladder, that there's contraption you can hook onto that and be attached as long as you're on or right next to the ladder. And then I see the guys with the D-rings in the back and the double hooks. And I've actually done that myself, and it's extremely tiring. Of course, I don't have the biggest arms in the world. So tell me about generally what the practices are and the acceptance of these safety practices in the industry. Does everybody follow the right rules and the best practices?
Well, you would hope that everybody follows the right rules and the best practices. You're talking about a climbing facility that the guys are using to ascend the tower. And the issue with that climbing facility is that according to the standard, they're not allowed to utilize it until they do an inspection of it, to make sure that it's not, it hasn't broken at the top of the tower. When people don't go up the tower every single day, things happen, wind happens, breakages happen. So in order for the guys to be able to use it, they have to inspect it. A lot of times the guys will connect to it and then they will use their harnesses, their lanyards to double claw. The first person will, and he'll go up and go, it's okay to use. And then everybody can use it and not have to use the double clicks. But then there's a transition to the tower, and that's where that harness that you're talking about and the lanyard you're talking about, they transition to utilizing the big hooks onto the tower.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that makes good sense. You wouldn't want to use that continuous cable to hold you if it's down to two strands at the top because nobody looked at it lately and it's gotten worn away, or it's rubbing against something it shouldn't be rubbing against, or maybe Correct. It was squeezed too tight upon installation and corrosion has gotten in there. Yeah.
Or maybe somebody has actually damaged it. A lot of times people will go up and put some sort of another antenna or something, and they will, what we call is, damage the climbing facility or impair the climbing facility. And you can actually take a drone and run a drone up the tower to see if it's connected at the top. And a lot of people are doing that, utilizing, that kind of technique to validate that it's good to climb on. It's got to be tensioned. So climbing facilities become damaged over time. And in order for us to be able to use them, we need to make sure that they're still in good shape before we get on them. Because they're there for a purpose. They're there to, to protect our guys.
You also mentioned rigging, and this is an important aspect. Talk to me a little bit about what you mean by rigging or learning about rigging. It seems like that's a huge topic of a lot of concerns. Some that, a bona fide engineer might need to be involved with rigging, particularly heavy or dangerous loads. But tell me what you can generally about rigging.
Well, every single thing that is done on the tower, and even including doing modifications to a tower or doing some adjustments because an antenna is put on and you have to make the tower stronger, requires planning. And we used to call them rigging plans, and we call them construction plans now, because even work on guy wires can affect the integrity of a tower. So the guys have to put together a construction plan. The A1048 calls out, what type of plan you have to do. Construction plan like a class 2. The guys can do, the competent guy on site can write it up if it's under 500 pounds and it doesn't affect the integrity of the tower. Class 3 plan can be done if they're going to use a crane, or up to 2,000 pounds. And again, it doesn't affect the integrity of the tower. Then you get into a class 4, and again, working on guy wires affects the integrity. That's not really rigging, but it's working on, something that affects it. So plans got to be done. You do any kind of a modification, structural modification, even removal of a redundant requires a class 4 plan, because that affects the integrity, and you have to have a qualified engineer involved. You start doing a big antenna that weighs, 2,000 pounds, like we did with the TVs. We had to have an engineer involved to talk about what is going to happen to the tower while you're doing the work. And that's the whole purpose. And those take time. You don't call a contractor and say, I need this kind of work to be done tomorrow. They can't get the engineer to review it in time. So there's a lot of working pieces, and all of it again is to protect the towers, to protect the work, and protect the guys that are doing the work.
Gotcha. Thanks, Kathy. Clark, back over to you. Thinking about the practical implications of the things that Kathy's talking about. The safety, the continuous tie off, or a continuous connection of a person to the tower, and the rigging. How does this affect you and your job with American Tower, being on the customer end of things here? What kind of things have to concern you in these areas?
So all of it concerns me, but I also know we have plans and procedures in place, and again, that proper vetting and onboarding of our contractors does help to mitigate that risk. The one place where we have taken maybe a more proactive step than some of our other counterparts in the industry is we require a rigging plan be submitted to us on every project, regardless of what work is being done out there. It is then reviewed by the safety team. And while we don't use the term approved, we will say we received it, we didn't find any errors, so it's been accepted for use on the site. We will also review it to see if there are any glaring errors, and we will reject that and kick it back and let that contractor, that customer know that the work cannot commence until that they have had one that's been accepted by us. So we try to do our due diligence to understand what they're doing, how they're doing it, and it's more so that they know what they're doing. They know that they're doing it correctly to keep their employees safe and to keep our structure safe.
Well, okay. So let's say that I'm an FM broadcaster and I have rented space from American Tower. I've got, I don't know, maybe a 3-bay medium power FM antenna, and it's 400 feet up the tower, and I want to replace it with maybe I've gotten an increase in power or something. I'm going to put a 6-bay antenna up there instead of the 3-bay. Once the business details are worked out, let's say I'm going to use the same coax, but go with more bays on the antenna. Would I typically would American Tower, would I hire you to do that work? Would you hire a tower crew, or would I hire a tower crew that needs to get your approval to do that work, and then the scope of work be documented and approved by you guys? How does that relationship typically need to work out?
Yeah, so typically the relationship would be once the lease has been amended, right, to reflect the new equipment that's on the tower, then that would be upon the customer, you being the radio station or the TV station, to procure your equipment, to locate the crew, and then come back to us with what that construction plan is. Let us review it again, make sure that company is safe, that they're certified. And then at which point we would accept it, and then you would be given a notice to proceed, where you could go out and commence your construction. And that's the typical runaround. I know that during maybe the broadcast repack, we might have gotten a little bit more involved in some of that ourselves, but I think as that died off, we've turned most of that back over to the customers themselves.
Okay. All right. So in our notes about this show, we mentioned the topic of ground hazards, and that's at the top of my list, but we hadn't really talked about that yet. Clark, what constitutes ground hazards to a tower crew?
The primary thing that I can think of is housekeeping. There are a lot of components that are involved in power construction or even line and antenna construction, whether it's wireless or it's broadcast. And the number one thing is going to be slips, trips, and falls. And even from a safety and efficiency standpoint, having a messy job site, you need quick access to your tools. You need quick access to potentially a fire extinguisher, your rescue kit, to get your equipment hooked up to be hoisted up the tower. So that's going to be the number one. Then number two, you just have to look around on the ground, right? Are there slips, trips, and falls, right? You're working on an uneven gravel surface. Are there holes in the ground? Are there potholes that haven't been fixed? Do you see anything sticking up from maybe a piece of grounding that can trip you that you're going to fall over? Very minor, but it does lead to bigger issues. I think that the biggest one on there is probably tidiness and housekeeping of an overall job site.
Okay. All right. And while you were telling me that, Clark, I'm looking at the natehome.com website. Kathy, I'm sure you have some input into this. What a beautifully well organized website. I'm looking at the area that has resources. And
Yes.
I see that you have a lot of documents on here, a lot of reports, checklists, and things like that are even available free of charge to download even to non-members of NATE.
Yes.
Tell me about this. The NATE Safety Resources is the page that I'm on.
There's so many of them. I don't know where to begin. And we're updating them every time. But yes, there are quite a few resources that are free. There's a lot of PANs, planning advisory notices that are on there. There are some that have to be purchased, but you just have at it. Go ahead and download. We're working with the tower owners right now on some anchor corrosion documents, and there's some bird requirements, but we're real proud of all of our resources. Again, we have so many safety experts that are within the organization. We love to write documents to help contractors and broadcasters. We'd love to help you.
Well, yeah, that's obvious. I see you can get documents here on wire mesh grips. I think that's pretty interesting. Safety posters. Your site, you can download safety posters from here. I guess print that out yourself and pop them up at your site to help keep everybody mindful. Base mounted hoist operator guidelines. See, that's something I would never think of, and right there it is. Of course, that needs to be something that the hoist operator, needs to be aware of the good stuff on there. The NATE RF awareness booklet, and RF is really something that we should talk about. In fact, why don't we begin that? I'll tell you what. Before I do that, Kathy, are there any guidelines, booklets, reports, posters that people really, really ought to be looking at or be interested in on your website? What do you highly recommend?
Well, you've mentioned all of them. You covered them all. I wrote that wire mesh grip one. That's a really interesting white paper, especially and it doesn't really affect the broadcasters, the radio broadcasters as much, because you basically are using coax. You're still using coax, and that's kind of how the wire mesh grips began. But for the wireless side, they changed from some coax to using some really interesting cables. And some of the wire mesh grips were not tested with them, so they can't support the weight. So it's a really cool document if you want to read. The RF awareness one, we had all kinds of RF experts work on it with us. Again, that's the wonderful part about NATE, is to have so many subject matter experts. If I don't know it, I just call somebody and say, hey, can you help me write it and educate everybody else? We love to share information. We love to make the guys' jobs easier. We love to make it safer for people. That's what we do. They all need to go home at night. So we're really tickled to death to share anything we've got. Now, there's things that we have to pay for. The A1048 standard, that's not a NATE document, even though so many of the NATE people worked on it. It's an ASSP ANSI document, so that has to be purchased. There is a climber rescue. Yeah, there's a climber rescue training standard out there that NATE worked on how do we train our employees? What's the best way of doing it? What's the requirements? That one, I believe, is a purchase one. And then there's a rigging training standard that we wrote. what's the minimum rigging requirements for a guy? The standard calls for minimum requirements, but in our industry, what are the minimum requirements that we feel like a rigger ought to know? So we wrote a document about it.
Okay. I will provide in the show notes for today's show a link to this particular page in particular, because it's a great resource, and a lot of the things you can download for free. Other things do cost, but that would be expected with the quality and caliber of some of these documents. Tell you what, we're going to take another break. When we come back, we need to talk about RF safety, because that is definitely a place where a broadcast engineer needs to get involved to typically reduce transmitter power or even turn a transmitter off for the safety and exposure of people climbing the tower. I certainly have had to do that numerous times. So we're going to get both Kathy and Clark to chime in on that. I'm Kirk Harnack. It's This Week in Radio Tech. Hey, I think the rain is starting to let up here in Charleston, South Carolina. Our show is brought to you in part by my friends at Angry Audio. My friends, that would be Mike Catfish Dosh. He's the owner of the company. Well, he just works there. He says his wife really owns the company. But Mike Dosh at Angry Audio has developed this beautiful audio console called the Rave audio console. And this thing is really gorgeous. In fact, you need to take a look at this. All the features that you're going to find in more expensive consoles they're in the Rave. Of course, you get 8 faders, and plus 2 faders for monitor and for headphone volume. But it's got recessed on-off buttons, so you really can't make a mistake in pushing a button when you didn't mean to. Channels 1 through 4 are switchable between mics and lines. There's preview or cue on every input. There are 2 stereo output mix buses, program and audition. An on-air indicator lights up when mics are open and monitors are muted, not just giving you a closure for your own tally lights, but on the console as well. So at a glance, you can say, oops, yep, I'm on the air here. There are dedicated meters for both output mix buses. The case, it is machined aluminum on the top control surface with laser-etched markings, and that means they're not going to wear off. These aren't painted on. These are not going to wear off. It's got a monitor selector with talkback to guests. It's got flexible monitoring sections for the board operators, full throw faders for your monitor and your headphone volume, and of course all 8 faders. And channels 7 and 8 are capable of mix minus. So that means you can easily bring a phone hybrid or a codec in and provide proper mix minus back to your caller or your guest on remote on the codec. It's the Angry Audio Rave console. Please check it out. If you're in the market for a small yet powerful and well-built audio console, this is it for you. Hey, This Week in Radio Tech is also sponsored by my good friend Josh Bone at Max Connect. And I got to tell you again about this really amazing little box that they have developed for the industry. And nothing else, truly nothing else exists like the U.182. The U.182 is unique to FM broadcasting. And there's never been anything like it before, and it's very much needed. If you want to run an FM audio processor as software on a PC, that would include things like Omnia SST or Stereo Tool or the Breakaway One processor. You're going to need a proper output from this computer. And some people have tried to do this with a sound card. And there are some sound cards that kind of work pretty well, but they're not perfect. Well, the U192 is designed to be perfect. It's a USB sound card that actually puts out an MPX, a multiplex, or also known as a composite signal. That's the signal that's on the BNC connector that then goes right to your exciter, the analog input on your FM exciter. Or if you're using an STL, like a 950 megahertz analog STL or a digital STL that carries composite, then you'll want to use this same connector to go from the output of your computer to a properly formatted MPX composite signal. Now, by the way, you got to get audio into that computer. Well, don't use the 1/8-inch plug on the back to bring your precious audio in. No. Use the input or output connectors, the analog or the digital connectors on the Max Connect U.192. So you can get clean audio into your computer and get that clean composite signal out of the computer for your transmission. Great idea. These things work fantastically well. They're actually designed and built by Angry Audio, so you know they're top notch. And Josh Bone makes them available through Max Connect. Go to the website Max Connect. That's spelled funny, I know. MAXXKONNECT. Max Connect. And we appreciate Max Connect and Angry Audio for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. You ought to patronize them. Really should. Make good stuff. All right, I'm talking to Clark Lindstrom and Kathy Stieler in the tower industry. Kathy is with Nate, and Clark is with American Tower. Let's talk about RF considerations, protection around tower crews. Let me start with Kathy and what some of the rules may be, and then we're going to get the practical application of this from Clark when your tower crew shows up on site and needs to climb past your antenna. So, Kathy, what generally should we know regulation-wise about exposure to RF?
Well, we all know you took me off guard here. We all know that there's IEEE, put out an RF awareness program about what kind of power is allowed, for how many minutes someone work through the aperture, right? So our guys, have to follow that, and they carry monitors with them, and if the monitors start going off, then they know they have to come off the tower. Or they're allowed to work, for a certain period of time. The monitors give them a guideline of, yes, you can work here. And when it hits another alarm, then you've got to come down. So they try to work with the broadcasters to keep power outages low, because I know that, keeping your transmitters on is money. However, we all know that there's government guidelines and there's regulations on what the guys can work in. Most every single guy that's out on your tower has been trained in RF, and they know what those guidelines are, and their monitors help them with that. I'm not really giving you the best answer on what's the guideline. It's everything that you guys have all worked with. You know where the power outage needs to be, and you know what the guidelines say. There's a wonderful document with Nate that will tell you. It'll tell you how many minutes the guys stay in the aperture or have to come down. Yes, they can climb through them, but sometimes you get RF from the other towers, next door. But yes, they can climb through. But you also have problems with their rigging, because when their antennas are on and the rigging is there, it causes sparks. So that's some of the other concerns relating to leaving antennas on. And especially if they've got to leave a tower rigged, overnight, whatever, they've got to make adjustments to make sure that it doesn't move in the wind and other, situations, because it sparks and it damages rigging.
Right. Okay. I've seen adherence or consideration for all those points. So thanks for that, Kathy. Clark, what can you tell us about the practical implications of human exposure, RF, and what you have to do about it? If you got a site, I'm sure a lot of American Tower sites have multiple tenants on them. My goodness, that seems like quite a coordination job to get everybody on the tower to reduce power as necessary so a crew can go by. How's that work?
Correct. Yeah. So I think the elephant in the room on this, right, is the actual shutdown. Nobody wants to do that. You have ads to run, right? You have to be powered up. And then the transverse of that is, we'll go do it at night when we can turn down. And I would just politely say that if you've ever been 1,000 feet in the air with a headlamp on your hard hat, trying to see what's on the ground 1,000 feet away, that's a nearly impossible task. Not to say that there aren't some brave men and women that don't do that on occasion, but ultimately the best bet for the overall safety of the tower crew and the efficiency of the job is to do those power downs or the complete shutdowns when possible. What I would say for you as a broadcast engineer or your contractor is start off with an on-site, like a pre-construction meeting on-site with every relevant broadcaster. And it's going to take time, right? It can take you upwards of 6 to 8 hours just to get to the top of a tall tower with your rigging and with the steel cable from the windstrom. But talk to each active broadcaster, each active tenant on there, and say, okay, from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., right, you guys are down to whatever it is, 50%. And the next one, maybe you're a higher power, you have to go down to 20% and even coordinate those. And there is a safe working limit within the distance of the antennas that they can be, but they need to have everybody on board. And I think the biggest thing that would perpetuate the safety of the crews is to have the broadcast engineer on site, maybe for the duration of their job, or at least at certain points. And then also provide a locking mechanism that shows that this radio has been turned down to X% per our agreement, and it's locked. And that way I don't have to worry about the broadcast engineer on site leaves, goes home for the night, and then the night shift engineer comes on and wonders why everything's down, and he rolls it back up from the studio. And now you have 3 or 4 people that are on the tower, and they're getting blasted, and they can't get out of the way soon enough. So I think it's a coordination. And again, working with the tower owner, we will have that information. We should know who it is. Also, you guys in the industry would likely know who your counterpart at heating station is and help coordinate that. But I think that's the overall, the safest thing to do is to have everybody on site to understand the time, the timing, the scope, and what it's really going to look like. And everybody have an honest conversation of this is what it's going to take. The crews, as Kathy said, they should all be trained in RF awareness. They all should have a monitor. That monitor is going to let them know when they're out of a safe area or when they're in a danger zone, and they should be able to leave that. But also having somebody that is on site, on location, that they can walkie-talkie down to is much more effective and much more efficient than having to wait on a 2 or 3 minute phone call. Maybe they answered, maybe they're driving, who knows what's going on, right? Pouring a cup of coffee. But that on-site presence is vital for ensuring that the safety of the employees on the tower.
Clark, when we think about exposure emitters on a tower, antennas that are going to present a hazard at their normal operating power, I always think, of course, of FM antennas, especially for Class C or Class B stations, and I think of TV transmitting antennas, some usually top mounted, but sometimes side mounted. And I really don't give much consideration to all the other types of services that may be on a tower, particularly omnidirectional things like two-way or even cell sites that are on a tower. Certainly there are cell sites on towers that otherwise are often used by broadcasters. So are there any types of services, types of antennas that a tower crew can pretty much discount, not have to really worry about at all? Are there any that just don't provide any concern to you?
In theory, in a perfect world, yes. Right, a typical cellular install, even a microwave install, those are directional antennas, right? They're parabolic. They are projecting out and away from the tower. They still should have their monitor on just in case there's any equipment malfunction. But those are generally, you pass behind those, not in front. And so they, on a all things considered basis, pose little to no risk. It is the TV antennas. It is the broadcasts. You would not see much from a two-way radio, right? It'd be minimal on your RF monitor.
Yeah.
But again, that's why the RF monitor is there. Yagis, some of the WISPs that are out there. Again, very minimal impact to people, but you never know if you're not wearing the proper equipment. So that's why we enforce the policy of you have to wear the equipment because you don't know what you don't know, and by the time you feel it, it's too late, right? You've already had the heating. You're going to have to come down. It's not a good situation. So it is the high power emitters, right? The 50 kW and above, or even probably 20 kW and above, that we really have to focus in on and work on the coordination and the turndowns.
Gotcha. Tell me about these meters. Are they expensive? I think they used to be. I carried a NARDA meter with me up. I actually was hired to climb when the transmitters were off up into one of the spires on top of the Willis Tower. It used to be known as the Sears Tower. And that was a long time ago. So yeah, tell me about the brand or model. What's popular out there for measuring this exposure?
There are a lot that are out there right now that are functional. I think the NARDA is still the go-to for a lot of the industry. It's very robust, very friendly, right? But to your point, it's expensive. It is one of the higher end models. It's very expensive. I know that at least with some of the broadcast folks I've talked to, that is their preferred model. I had a comment from one of the safety meetings that I was conducting, and there are others on the market.
Yeah.
And again, we can send a link out to them. But they said the new one that you recommended. As soon as I get out of the truck, it starts going off. It's too sensitive, and I laugh and said that's probably a good thing.
Run away.
Yeah. Maybe your old one's out of calibration. Maybe there's something we have to figure out. And there was actually a bleeding line that we had to go get fixed. So when he brought that up to me and said it's too sensitive, yeah.
Kathy, I'm sorry about the echo cancellation is knocking your voice out, Kathy. Go ahead, Kathy, with your comment, please.
Oh, I was just saying it did its job. That was wonderful that it did its job. And you mentioned something also, Clark, they have to be calibrated. So, these guys that buy them, they calibrate them every year to keep them up.
Yeah.
Wow. And these meters, I'm sure they measure exposure over time. So whatever clock is in them, I guess there's at some point they can get reset. Like if I climb down the tower and sit around and have lunch for an hour and then go back up, I get to reset the timer, right?
It does it internally. It does it for you.
Okay.
They don't have to do anything on it. It does it internally. It knows.
Okay. Yeah.
And with their training, right, it is a time weighted average. So the employees that are on the tower, the meter will tell them, right, 0 to 100%. It will light up. Some will vibrate. Once you hit that 100% to 200%, it will start chirping at you to let you know. And once you get above that 100, it's time to leave. But again, with your RF training, it's a time weighted average. I think the calculations that you see from the FCC or maybe even on the NATE document, I think they averaged it out to like a 6-minute weighted average. But it's mostly based upon the exposure level that you have. And again, leaving the area does the soft reset. So if you're 5 minutes in, right, you're 5 minutes out. You're 10 minutes in, you're 10 minutes out.
Okay.
And the meter will drop once you're out of the exposure area.
Right.
Yeah. I heard that microwave engineers of old, like back in the early days of microwave, like in the late 40s, early 50s, they would use a chocolate bar. And if the chocolate bar melted, it was time to leave. Oh, that led to the invention of the Amana radar range, didn't it?
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. That's a pretty good telltale sign. But I think at that point, you're probably a little bit too late if you're melting a Hershey's bar in your pocket.
Could be. Is there? Let's talk a bit more about RF radiation in just a minute here. I know there are government standards, and back when a lot of those standards came out, oh my goodness, I was reading about this. It literally had to be 40 years ago. I was reading some of the ANSI publications on this. What are the negative effects that maybe are known? I mean, is there any brain scrambling done? Does it hurt my ability to have children? Sometimes we joke about that. There's heating effect. Do we know much about negative effects from too much RF other than heating of tissues?
So I'm not a doctor, so I will go based on just the knowledge I have. Right, and the difference between RF, whether it's from cellular or broadcast, is versus like a microwave, right? Is a microwave, X-ray, well, not even microwave, sorry, X-rays. That is ionizing radiation, right? It builds up in your body over time. It does have potential long-term health effects. That's why they put the lead bib on you whenever you go in to cover your sensitive areas. Microwave dishes, cellular antennas, broadcast TV antennas, that is called non-ionizing radiation, right? So once you remove yourself from the area of heating, the damage stops. Again, if you get a high enough exposure, if you're a tower climber and you thought the antenna was off and somebody turns it back up to 100 kW, there could be potential long-term damage if you don't get out of there soon enough. It does affect the soft tissues more than anything else. So you would think, eyes, thyroid, testicles, kidneys, some of that. If you're feeling it in the rest of your body, you're getting cooked by that point. I'm sure Kathy has a lot more details on that than maybe I do, but those are kind of the key indicators. Is if you feel hot, it's too late, and that's why you wear your meter.
So, Kathy, it sounds like no matter how good of a chef you are, you should not do your cooking on the tower.
Exactly. You should never do your cooking on the tower. And and Clark is really right. I mean, the guys really require all of the broadcast engineers to work together to try to make a job easy. That's what makes a job easy. It makes it go faster, and everybody coordinates. So they don't like to stand around and wait either. And having all the broadcasters work together on these power outages really does help a job. It really makes the whole job simpler for everybody. It helps the engineer and it helps the crews.
Got you. Got you. All right. Well, good. Tell you what, we're going to take our last break. And when we come back, Clark and Kathy, once again, your terrible host failed to warn you about the last segment of the show. I'm looking for a tip of the week. And it could be a website, a publication, a practice, a piece of equipment. It could be joining your organization, whatever it is. I'd like for you to each give me a tip that you would like to leave the viewers of this show as just a final talisman, a takeaway from the show. And we'll be back with that in about 2 minutes. So you got 2 minutes to research your answer on this. Our show is brought to you in part by Broadcasters General Store, where you can get equipment from broadcast tools. And the one I'd like to mention to you today is the remote control that Don Wingett and his organization at Broadcast Tools, they keep improving this, making it better, and making it more and more useful. It's the WVRC 8 Plus. What does the plus mean? Well, it now has web remote control as well as voice dial-up remote control. And we've all gone to, or a lot of us have gone to websites, web connections at transmitter sites, internet connections. And so we have a web-based remote control, and that's great. Sometimes you're on your way driving to a transmitter site, something's wrong, or you're checking on it, and you don't have the convenience of a laptop or maybe an internet connection right there with you conveniently, but you got a phone and you can call it. And that's nice to be able to get the information that you need, either through voice remote or visually through the web GUI. Well, the WVRC 8 Plus is a cost-effective web-enabled remote control that features a desktop mobile browser, compatible web interface, so you actually can look at it on your smartphone, and a dial-up telephone interface. It's in a one rack unit form factor. It's got 8 raise relays, up. It's got 8 lower relays. Hey, come back, down, or turn off. And it's got 8 status inputs, on or off, is this working or not working, and 8 metering inputs, for meter readings. It also has a temperature probe input, a silence sensor input, and a power failure input. It's got a lot of features on it, and it's just right for so many transmitter sites. It also has an NTP time base or battery backed up real-time clock that stays accurately plus or minus 2 minutes a year. Holy cow. It's just so many benefits are in this thing. 100 event program scheduler for relay control, for alarm muting. It logs all the user selected input status with site ID information that can be emailed either once an hour or once a day, along with snapshot functionality. It's got 72 front panel IO activity LED indicators. It's just so many, very RFI proofed. Don Wingett's so good. His company, Broadcast Tools, they're so good at designing products that are for use by actual broadcasters. And so that means that you're not going to have RFI problems by putting the WVRC 8 Plus into your transmitter site. Now, where can you get this? Well, of course, you can get it from Broadcasters General Store. They'll tell you more about it. They'll tell you about availability and pricing, although it's good price. Good price on this product. And it can help you control your transmitter site, stay in touch with your transmitter site, and of course, reach out to you in case of any alarm conditions. Check it out at, at Broadcasters General Store. The website is bgs.cc, and their phone number is 352-622-7700. Love the folks at Broadcasters General Store. All right, it's This Week in Radio Tech. We're wrapping up with our guests in the tower and tower safety business. We have Kathy Stieler here, and also Clark Lindstrom is here as well. He's from American Tower. All right, so don't everybody raise your hands at once. Who wants to go first and give us a tip of the week?
I can do it.
Okay, Kathy, you raised your hand. Go ahead.
I will tell you. Again, I started in this industry in 2011 working for a contractor and an antenna manufacturer. And I relied upon Nate to help find contractors to work with me. and I relied on Nate to help me with the safety for my organization. I totally buy into Nate. I buy into what we do. And it's such a unified group of people that we all get together for the same purpose, to make the industry safer. We look at what is affecting all the guys out in the field and try to help them find solutions, and as well as work with the broadcasters. What are their issues with their contractors and how can we help you? I started laughing when I was hired. I sort of became Google for Nate. Everybody would call me and say, hey, Kathy, I need help with this. I need help with that. That's really what Nate is all about. It's about helping the industry and make sure that the tower climbers go home safe and make sure that the work is done safely for everybody. Quality work. It's absolutely a phenomenal organization. The amount of safety resources and the amount of people that work together to help each other is amazing. So that is my tip of the week. I've worked with broadcasters for years. I did a lot of FM installs and TV installs. Love the broadcasters. And I can tell you that the questions that I had as a contractor working for the broadcasters, I got my answers through Nate. They helped me. So it's payback time.
I'm really discovering the website is quite amazing. And there's so many things on there, even for non-members, can take advantage of free of charge, a lot of information and helpful stuff. So and the website is it natehome.com, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. I'll put that in the show notes.
You can call me. You don't have to be
All
a
right.
member of Nate to call me.
All right. Thanks a lot. And also Clark, can you leave us with a tip of the week, some words of wisdom?
Yeah, so I do have a tip of the week, but I also want to second what Kathy said. Right, Nate has been fundamental in changing the industry overall, and I know I am here, as the safety director for American Tower, but we are also represented by our competitors, right? Both Crown Castle, SBA, as well as other contractors, other members of the industry. So it is a giant collaboration. I think we all want the best for people. But my tip of the week is, if you are attending the NAB show in Vegas next 2 weeks from now, Ms. Stieler and I will be presenting on tower safety on Monday afternoon, and we are going to be covering this exact topic. We will also be around for discussion throughout the week. Our segment is called Tower Safety: A Comprehensive Approach to Risk Management. So we're gonna have a moderator, and we're gonna cover all the same things that we talked about here. We're gonna be available for discussion. Really talking about things, right? Site access and site security, RF hazard management, the NFPA signage, which is something we really didn't get into, but that is a way to identify the crews that work on your tower sites or in your equipment rooms of the hazards of whether it's batteries, diesel, kerosene, right? And it also informs first responders what to do in case of an emergency. So my recommendation is, if you have any follow-ups, again, reach out to Kathy. You can reach out to me directly. But if you happen to be at NAB, come see us on Monday afternoon.
That's a great tip, and I will find a link to that session. And of course, you probably got to be registered for the BEITC, but that's going to be worth attending. So thank you very much for that, Clark and Kathy. Thank you both for being with us. It's been a pleasure to get to know you both for this hour, and a topic that we don't usually talk about here. So, but certainly good information for the viewers of the show. So thanks so kindly. Also want to thank Suncast, our producer, right on top of things again. Thank you, Suncast. And Suncast, Suncast, you and I need to talk, because I want to hear about your adventure in kayaking in a cave that you did this past week. So Suncast had quite the adventure in Kentucky this week. We'll talk about that later. All right, we got to go. Please patronize our sponsors. They're good people, and they typically offer services and goods that you need as a broadcaster, as a broadcast engineer. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech.